Hello, I am Juan. I am the head of the Industrial Design program at the Faculty of Art and Design at the Pontifical Catholic University of Peru. I'm also a professor of design theory, design methodology, and advanced design project. And I will be talking about design research in the era of the Anthropocene on amodernity and socio-natural design. First, I would like to show an ontological evolution of the design field. And as we can see in the graphic, the graphs shows how design has moved first from being within other two different disciplines, which is science and art, to having its own disciplinary space, and then move towards including interrelationships with other fields such as the humanities and social sciences. And if we look closer, we can actually see, in particular within the industrial design field, that there is not just one story of this evolution, but rather two main narratives. One that comes from a human-centered perspective or approach to industrial design, which is the one we're looking right now, which presents the evolution of paradigms from art, and when it was considered as a movement known as arts and crafts, and how it has evolved since the institution of the Bauhaus in the 1920s, and moving towards being considered as an ergonomic discipline, and the inclusion of usability, emotion, co-creation, and most recently, a network of actors. And as I mentioned, this is not the only story of the industrial design field evolution, but there's also evolution within a more environmental-oriented industrial design, which started with green design in the 1990s up to the design for system innovations and transitions. And something interesting that has been noticed in the work of Abhishek Cheskin and Idil Kasyursoy is that as the discipline moved forward, it included not just environmental and economic dimensions on its practice, but also socio-ethical aspects as well. And from perspective of the outcomes, we could think of industrial design from a traditional perspective, which involves the design of industrial goods for mass manufacturing, which in essence involves functional and emotional dimensions in all of these variables. And these have been quite a norm for most of the 20th century design practice and research. However, from the 2000s on, it has also expanded in its outcomes to include also services and a more focus on social innovation. And this means also the inclusion of an additional dimension, that is the socio-cultural dimension, additional to the other prior two dimensions already mentioned. And this has been, as I mentioned, the scenario up until the current year. However, there are other issues that are getting more importance, especially thinking towards the future. And one of these issues is this new concept of the Anthropocene, which in essence means or tackles the issues in relation to the implications of human activity on the definition of the planet itself and its behavior. And so in face of this new scenario of the Anthropocene, we have to think on how to conceptualize an industrial design perspective, which not only focuses rather on more human-oriented or environmental-oriented perspective, but it involves both at the same time, trying to approach a perspective of design of socio-natural product, services, and systems. And in this endeavor, there are some issues that come along, because if we only try to put together this additional natural dimension and have 4 dimensions, it may work in paper, but in practice, it presents a lot of difficulties, incompatibilities between different techniques and methods that come from different design legacies, as we could say. So this problem required a different approach that does not lay its foundings on the actual practices or methodologies, but rather it required a fundamental conceptual reframing. And so in the work of Bruno Latour, there is an interesting inquiry in the mere concept of modernity, which is in essence a conceptual separation between society and nature that has been evolving since the time of the Enlightenment, towards a modern approach, which seeks for this conceptual integration of society and nature. And also along the concept of amodernity comes a revisitation of pre-modern knowledge or ancestral knowledge. And this comes particularly interesting in building a perspective of design research in countries in Latin America, for instance, where there is a strong ancestral background that most of the time has been put aside or not taken seriously. But from this a modern perspective, we can actually find really interesting aspects of it. For instance, the fact that in pre-modern design activities already there were concepts of contemporary socio-technical infrastructures, and it opens the idea of also understanding how we can start designing socio-natural infrastructures in our current design practices. So for this new conceptualization of the socio-natural design of systems, we have to also include the idea of infrastructure as an outcome of design. So it's not just products or services, but also the infrastructure that holds them all together. And rather than having 4 dimensions, still thinking that the social and natural dimensions are independent from each other, this particular approach that merges these 2 dimensions in only one, named socio-natural dimension, allows for a more smooth move towards actual implementations and methodologies and methods that can be applied, because it only reframes how we are approaching these methods and practices, but it doesn't imply the need for a radically different way of implementing the methods. And the difference in approach also is built upon 2 important theoretical backgrounds. One, there is the socio-technical infrastructure, which now is expanded to an additional layer. So it's not just technical and social, but also natural, and how these are actually intertwined among each other. And also the sustainable design framework that involves economical, socio-ethical, and environmental considerations. So as I mentioned, these conceptual approaches can more feasibly be applied into methodologies. In particular, the one that we use in DeepBook is called the DeepBook Research Through Design methodology, which it's an merging of design practice with design research, and particularly the kind of research that involves doing design as part of doing research, as Christopher and Freiling put it in this term of research for design. And now I would like to share with you some examples of how these conceptual approaches and methodology comes into shape in the form of projects and in design. I will talk about 2 main projects. One, there is more of a speculative and future design approach, which is called Ceiba, which is a city for the near future, which is set to be located in the jungle area in Peru. And the particular approach for the design of this city is based on the idea of how we formulate or reformulate human society and human living in a context that creates a true balance between society and nature through the approach of socio-natural infrastructures for creating this new system. So we revised from the basic infrastructure that supports life and obtains and recirculates resources, and you have circularity of resources. We have also thought of sewage systems and drinking water systems. And of course, as you may notice, this is really an interdisciplinary endeavor that we work along with other disciplines and professionals within the university campus. And here are some examples of more specific systems. One of those is how we think or rethink food in a more socio-natural society. And here we can see in the left the systemic an infrastructural approach that bases its practices on a shift from meat towards protein obtained from insects. And of course, this means also a cultural change. And in the image of the right, you can see how this is approached through social relations based on a gathering or family gathering. Also, another important aspect of this socio-natural and amodern approach, as I mentioned, is the fact that it considers pre-modern knowledge. So, for instance, in this implementation of water management infrastructure, some ancestral practices of water management were revised and found that they were actually pretty appropriate for implementation of this kind of city. And so the whole infrastructure of water management was designed and developed, and as well up to the point of micro and specific designs, such as the one on the right, which is a sink that pulverizes water in order to be more water efficient. Also, we can see infrastructures, socio-natural infrastructures, and living and transportation. And this aspect is also interesting because it poses questions about which it could be a reasonable density for a city. And once that density is surpassed, then the idea is that the cities works as modules, and people can be distributed within different cities so as to fit the living conditions for everyone. As well as specific aspects of the actual house and how from an infrastructural level, this house also expands in a way that it responds to the expansion of the families as more members come along, and so forth, as well as aspects of the public transport, where again, the idea is to rethink how to manage a more socio-natural transportation idea. And that's also the reason of the topology of the city of concentric circles, in order to make it more efficient, and as well to trying to distribute commuting not only through specific centralized roads, but rather a more balanced distribution of activities around the city. And another project is a more specific project, or more close to an actual case, is that this project that we developed in San Bartolo, which is a city in south to the capital city of Peru. And something important to mention, as you can see in the image, is that this city and the whole coastal area of Peru is an actual desert biome. So here we started first identifying main correlations between the natural landscape and territory, and how it conditions and affects human activity and human living in this city. And these different activities and conditions were mapped. And from different studies, such as ethnography and ethnography as well, some moments of truth, as we call it, were identified, which were specific moments within the city that could be potential links between social dimensions of living with natural support, or where people could actually be more aware of these fundamental links. So in the newest scenario, or within the proposal, 4 different axes were identified and developed so as to bring new living experiences for the locals, but as well as a tourism approach for the city. And some interesting aspect of this is that looking again to how the city is built, and even the ancestral past of the city, we also made a trail on a route that went specifically in the land axis, that went to find an interesting natural landscapes in the whole San Bartolo area. And from that, we also linked other aspects of the nature that configures the experience of people in this particular district, and developed a whole plan for implementation of local experiences plus tourism that involves not just what is mostly known in this area, which is the coastal part, but also interesting landscapes which can bring more rich living for people, as well as preserve natural environments. And that's it for this presentation. I hope you enjoy it and hope to continue the discussion in the conference. Thank you.